The first bullet cracked past her ear before she even realized the convoy was under attack. The sound was sharp, a whistling snap that made the air burn, and then came the eruption of chaos, the thud of machine guns, the blast of an RPG, and the screaming of men in the back of the armored vehicle. Private First Class Lena Rock didn't have the luxury of hesitation. She shoved the door open, boots hitting the sand hard as she rolled to the dirt, rifle clutched tight in her hands. The world became fire and dust and deafening noise. Contact! East Ridge. Someone shouted through the cacophony, voice nearly drowned out by the hammering of .50 cal fire from the lead Humvee. Her lungs burned with each breath of grit-filled air, but training forced her body into motion. She slapped the charging handle, dropped to a knee, and sighted in on the ridge where muzzle flashes winked like fireflies in hell. Her finger squeezed, recoil jolted her shoulder, and she watched one figure tumble backward before another popped up in his place. The convoy had been moving supplies to an outpost, a routine run, they told her, one of those boring missions where the biggest danger was sand clogging the rifle. Routine. She could almost laugh at the word now, if not for the blood dripping down Sergeant Donnell's neck as he slumped against the door of the MAP. He wasn't moving, and the radio was squawking a mess of overlapping voices begging for air support, artillery, anything. Rourke's hands trembled, not from fear but from adrenaline that threatened to consume her. She wanted to be steady. She wanted to look like the soldiers who had mocked her earlier that morning in the weapons store, laughing at how the M249 looked oversized in her smaller frame. "Sure you can even carry that, Rourke?" one of them had smirked. She had ignored it, shouldering the weapon like it was an extension of herself. She remembered the sting of their laughter, the burn in her ears, and the way she swore silently that she would make them eat those words someday. That someday had come sooner than she expected. "Rock! Suppress that ridge!" Corporal Hayes barked, dragging another soldier behind the truck for cover. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. She threw herself prone, set up her bipod, and let the saw sing. The belt-fed weapon roared to life, spitting brass and fury, chewing into the rocks where the insurgents were firing. The ridge lit up with sparks as bullets slammed stone. A man tried to pop his head over the crest, he didn't get the chance to finish the thought. She fired until the barrel smoked and the belt ran dry. The lull gave her a second to hear herself breathe, rapid and shallow, heart pounding like it wanted out of her chest. She slapped in a fresh belt, teeth gritted, ignoring the sting in her shoulder and the heat blistering through her gloves. Then came the secondary blast, an IED hidden under the dirt road, tearing through the last truck in the convoy. The shockwave punched her into the ground. Ears rang. Smoke poured. The screams cut into her bones. "Medic! We need a medic," someone bellowed. Rourke blinked the blur from her eyes and saw Private Calder dragging himself out of the wreckage, his leg bent in ways no human leg should bend. She wanted to go to him, but the ridge wasn't quiet yet. Shadows still moved, rifles still cracked. If she stopped firing, more of her squad would fall. And so she made the choice, the brutal, gut-punching choice that war forced onto every soldier. She stayed on the gun. Every decision had weight. She could feel it stacking already, like bricks pressed into her chest. Minutes bled into each other. The fight didn't let up. By the time the Apaches arrived overhead, tearing the ridge apart with rockets, the convoy was a mess of smoke, oil, and mangled steel. Silence, when it came, was heavy, suffocating. Rourke's arms ached from recoil, her ears buzzed like a hive, and her uniform was caked in dust and sweat. She didn't know how many she had dropped, only that she had kept them away long enough for the others to survive. Hayes clapped her shoulder hard enough to make her stagger. "Good work, Rourke. You kept us breathing." The words didn't feel like praise. They felt like a verdict. She had chosen the gun over Calder, and now Calder was unconscious on a stretcher with medics working furiously to keep him alive. The image seared itself into her memory. Later, back at the forward operating base, they stripped their weapons, cleaned them in silence, each soldier retreating into their own mind. The mess hall that night was quieter than usual. Rourke sat alone, tray untouched, replaying the firefight in her head. She could still hear the laughter from that morning at the weapons store. The same men who laughed were alive now because she hadn't folded under fire. But instead of satisfaction, all she felt was a gnawing weight. Was this what victory tasted like? The metallic sting of guilt and smoke? Captain Merrick entered, eyes scanning the room before locking on her. He walked over, expression unreadable, and the soldiers around her hushed. He stopped by her table, straightened, and then, before she could understand why, he raised his hand in a sharp salute. The room froze. Forks clattered. No one moved. Rourke blinked at him, confused. "Sir." You held the line today, Merrick said. His voice carried, measured and deliberate. Without you, we'd be pulling body bags right now instead of wounded men. You earned this salute, soldier. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. The same soldiers who had mocked her earlier sat wide-eyed, silence heavy where laughter used to be. She stood slowly, returned the salute with a trembling hand, and felt the balance of things shift in ways she hadn't expected. Respect wasn't given here, it was taken, forged in fire and bought with blood. That night, sleep didn't come easy. When it did, it brought dreams of Calder's broken leg and the man she saw tumble from her gunfire. She woke to sweat soaking her cot, heart pounding. War wasn't glory. War was choice after choice, and each one carved something out of you. The next day the orders came. Patrol. They needed to secure the villages near the ridge to prevent another ambush. Rourke geared up, hands steady despite the exhaustion, sword slung across her chest. Hayes caught her eye. You ready? No, she admitted. But I'll go anyway. That earned a ghost of a grin from him. Good answer. They rolled out at dawn, the desert painted gold by the rising sun. The air was deceptively calm, silence stretching wide across the sand. Every bump of the Humvee rattled her bones, every shadow on the horizon made her finger twitch. The villagers watched from doorways as they passed, eyes unreadable, children peeking from behind mothers' skirts. Were they allies? Informants? Or the ones planting IEDs in the road at night? There was no way to know, only decisions to make in the moment, decisions that would stick like scars. At one checkpoint, a boy no older than 10 stepped into the road, holding a basket. Hayes froze. Everyone froze. Could be fruit. Could be explosives. Rourke's stomach knotted. The gunner above called out, "Orders, Corporal." Hayes' eyes flicked to Rourke, almost like he was weighing her. She felt the burden drop on her shoulders. She looked at the boy, at the basket, at the way his hands shook. She thought of Calder, bleeding in the dirt, of laughter that turned into silence, of a commander's salute that still felt undeserved. Her finger twitched on the trigger but Rourke's hands were steady on the grip of her weapon, but inside she felt every nerve vibrate like a live wire. The boy stood in the middle of the dusty road, basket clutched tight, bare feet coated with the same sand that clung to her boots. His eyes were too wide, too frightened. She knew that look. She had seen it on new recruits, on men about to die, on faces staring down choices they didn't understand. The gunner above repeated, "Orders, Corporal." Hayes didn't answer. He looked at Rourke again, and she realized it wasn't hesitation, it was trust. He trusted her judgment. A weight that should have belonged to him suddenly rested on her chest, pressing her lungs, tightening her throat. If the boy carried explosives, hesitation could mean the death of half their squad. If she fired and the basket was harmless, she'd live with the blood of a child on her conscience forever. The desert wind tugged at her helmet strap. Sweat burned her eyes. She remembered Calder's screams as he was pulled from the wreckage, the way Sergeant Donnell slumped with blood on his collar. She remembered Captain Merrick's salute. The laughter that had vanished. Her rifle tracked the boy. Every second stretched. She could hear her heartbeat louder than the idling engines. Finally, she shouted, voice sharp, commanding, louder than she thought she could make it, "Basket on the ground. Now." The boy froze. His eyes darted between the armored vehicles, the soldiers pointing rifles at him. For a moment, she thought he didn't understand English. Then slowly, hesitantly, he crouched and placed the basket on the dirt. "Step back," she ordered. "Hands up." He obeyed, trembling. The tension didn't ease. Hayes nodded to one of the soldiers, who advanced cautiously, bomb kit ready. Rourke's finger stayed on the trigger, eyes never leaving the basket. When the soldier reached it, he knelt, hands shaking only slightly as he probed beneath the woven lid. Seconds ticked. Rourke's stomach turned. Then the lid lifted, and the soldier exhaled loudly. "Oranges," he called out, voice flat with disbelief. "Just fruit." Relief should have hit her like a wave, but it didn't. It was sharp, painful, like a blade slipping between her ribs. She had been one twitch away from killing an innocent child. Her vision blurred for a second, not from tears but from the pressure of realization. Hayes ordered the boy escorted back to the village, basket in hand. The convoy rolled forward, and Rourke sat in silence, staring out at the desert. No one laughed. No one said anything. The weight of what almost happened hung over them all. That night, she couldn't eat again. Her stomach wouldn't allow it. She cleaned her weapon like ritual, each movement mechanical. The sound of the cleaning rod scraping the barrel was the only rhythm that kept her grounded. Hayes sat across from her, helmet off, sweat plastering his hair to his forehead. "You made the right call," he said finally. "Did I?" she asked, not looking up. "You didn't shoot. The boy's alive. We're alive. That's a right call in my book." She wanted to believe him, but the thought twisted inside her. She had been a half-second from pulling the trigger. That hesitation, that breath, it would haunt her, because one day it wouldn't be oranges. One day, her mercy could mean death for everyone around her. When she finally slept, the dream came again. Calder's leg. Donnell's slack face. The boy with the basket. But in the dream, when the lid lifted, it wasn't fruit. It was wires, triggers, fire. And she woke up gasping, nails digging crescents into her palms. The next morning, orders came fast. A night raid was planned on a compound linked to the ambush on their convoy. Intelligence said insurgents were stockpiling weapons, planning another strike. Rourke listened as Merrick briefed them, maps spread on the table, red circles marking danger points. The captain's tone was calm, measured, but his eyes betrayed the weight of command. He glanced at her once, subtle, like he knew she was carrying more than her gear. When dusk fell, the squad geared up. Rourke checked her saw 3 times, every bolt and belt. She moved like a machine, every action precise. Humor sparked in quick bursts, Mendez cracking a joke about how his boots smelled worse than the goat pens they passed last week, but it was hollow, brittle. They all knew what they were stepping into. They rolled out under a sliver of moon, hums bouncing on dirt tracks until they stopped short of the compound. From there, it was boots on the ground, night vision glowing green, weapons raised. The air was thick with tension, each crunch of gravel loud in the silence. Hayes whispered into comms, "Stack up." Rourke took her place at the rear, saw braced. The door was blown with a small charge, wood splintering inward. They surged through. Shouts erupted in the darkness. Figures scrambled, rifles fired. The world collapsed into chaos again. She laid down suppressive fire, the saw's roar drowning her heartbeat. Muzzle flashes lit up doorways. Dust and plaster filled the air. She saw a man raise an RPG, and without thinking, she cut him down. No hesitation this time. No second thoughts. Just instinct. The fight raged through narrow halls, through courtyards filled with crates. They cleared room after room, bodies dropping, shouts in languages she didn't understand echoing off stone walls. The compound reeked of sweat, gunpowder, and fear. Then came the explosion. Not from them, from inside. A hidden charge, detonated by one of the fleeing fighters. The blast threw her against a wall, her ears ringing. Pain ripped through her ribs, but she forced herself up, vision swimming. Smoke choked the air. Through the haze, she saw Hayes pinned beneath debris, blood streaking his forehead. Without thinking, she rushed forward, heaving at the slab of stone pinning his leg. It didn't budge. "Go," he shouted, voice hoarse. "Finish the sweep." "Not leaving you," she yelled back, straining until her muscles screamed. 2 others rushed to help, and together they shifted the weight just enough to drag him free. Hayes gasped, clutching his leg, but he was alive. That was enough. By the time they cleared the last room, the compound was a ruin of smoke and fire. Weapons were stacked in piles, RPGs, rifles, crates of ammo. The intel had been right. They radioed in for demolition, charges planted to ensure none of it would be used again. As they pulled out, Hayes leaned on her shoulder, limping. He gave her a grim smile. "Guess I owe you one." She didn't answer. Her chest ached too much, not just from the bruises but from the choices piling higher. Each one left a mark. Each one demanded a price. Back at base, Merrick found her alone again, sitting on a crate outside the barracks, helmet off, hair damp with sweat. He stood quietly for a moment before speaking. "You saved Hayes tonight. You kept the squad moving. You did your job." She looked up at him, eyes shadowed. "My job is pulling the trigger. My job almost killed a kid yesterday." Merrick's gaze was steady, unreadable. "War isn't clean, Rourke. It's never clean. You make the best call you can in the moment, and you live with it. That's what makes a soldier. Not the gun. Not the gear. The choices." She didn't reply. She couldn't. He left her with those words, and she sat in silence, staring at the horizon where the desert swallowed the sun. Days blurred. Patrols, raids, convoys. Each one carried its own tension, its own impossible choices. Rourke grew harder, sharper. The others noticed. Jokes about her size stopped. Respect came quietly, like a shift in the air. Soldiers who once doubted her now followed her lead without question. But inside, she felt the weight pressing deeper. Calder was still in medical. Hayes walked with a limp now. The boy with the oranges haunted her sleep. Every time she squeezed the trigger, she wondered if the target had a family, if their laughter would vanish just like hers had. One evening, as she cleaned her saw under the fading light, Mendez sat beside her. He didn't speak at first, just sharpened his knife. Then he said, "Lo, you ever think about what happens when we go home? If we make it home?" She glanced at him, then back at her weapon. "Every damn day." He chuckled, but it was humorless. "Feels like we leave parts of ourselves out here. Like the sand just takes it." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. They both knew it was true. The next mission would prove it again. Orders came for a high-value target, a commander linked to multiple attacks. They were to capture him alive. Alive. That word carried its own weight. Rourke geared up once more, each strap tightened, each belt loaded. She looked at herself in the mirror briefly, a face harder than she remembered, eyes older than her years. She didn't laugh. She didn't smile. She just moved, because that was what soldiers did. When they rolled out under cover of darkness, she felt the same knot in her stomach she always did now. A knot of dread, of anticipation, of choices waiting in the shadows. She gripped her saw tight, breath steady, mind focused. And as the convoy neared the village where their target was rumored to be hiding, she wondered, not for the first time, how much of herself she would leave behind tonight. The hums rolled to a stop just shy of the village's edge, engines idling low, headlights blacked out under the moon. The village lay quiet, mud brick houses clustered together like shadows clinging to the earth. Dogs barked in the distance, then fell silent. It was the kind of silence that pressed against the skin, heavy with the knowledge that eyes were watching from behind shuttered windows. Rourke slid out, boots crunching softly on dirt. The saw felt heavier tonight, like it knew what was coming. She adjusted her grip, scanned rooftops through her night vision. Every rooftop was a potential sniper's nest, every alley a place for an ambush. Her heart thumped a steady beat in her ears, too loud against the hush. Hayes limped at the front, determination carved into his face despite the stiffness in his leg. He didn't complain, didn't falter. He motioned them forward, and they moved like shadows, hugging walls, covering angles. The mission was clear: find and capture the high-value target, codenamed Falcon. Intel said he was the architect behind the ambush that killed Donnell and put Calder in a cot. If they got him alive, it could cripple enemy operations in the sector. They reached the first compound, a squat building with faded paint and a wooden door scarred from weather. Mendez set the breaching charge, whispering the countdown. The door blew inward with a muffled thud, and the squad stormed through, rifles up, clearing corners. Women screamed, children cried, hands raised. No fighters. Just a family cowering against the wall. Rourke's stomach tightened, but there was no time to linger. Hayes questioned the man of the house, voice sharp, translator working quick. The man shook his head violently, swore he knew nothing. Hayes pulled back, motioning to move on. They cleared 3 more compounds, each empty of fighters but filled with fear. The intel had better be right, Rourke thought, or this was all just stirring a hornet's nest. Finally, they reached the target compound, a larger house at the far end of the village, 2 stories, fortified walls. The kind of house that didn't fit the poverty around it. "Stack," Hayes whispered. Rourke took her place, saw ready, adrenaline burning cold in her veins. The door went down with another blast, and they surged in. This time, resistance came immediately. Gunfire erupted from the stairwell, bullets sparking against walls, ricochets whining past ears. The squad dove for cover, returning fire. Rourke hit the dirt, swung her saw toward the stairs, and unleashed a stream of rounds. Dust and plaster exploded from the wall as enemy fire faltered. Hayes shouted, "Move!" Up the stairs. They advanced, step by step, trading fire. Rourke laid down suppression, her weapon's roar filling the cramped space. 2 fighters fell, their rifles clattering down the steps. Another threw himself from a doorway, AK raised. Rourke cut him down before he squeezed the trigger. At the top, they found more resistance. Fighters barricaded behind overturned furniture, firing wild. The air reeked of gunpowder and sweat, acrid smoke burning eyes. "Frag out!" Mendez shouted, lobbing a grenade into the room. The blast rocked the building, screams following. They stormed through, clearing the last of the resistance. Bodies lay sprawled, blood dark against the concrete floor. And there, in the corner, crouched a man with a trimmed beard, eyes burning with defiance even as he dropped his weapon. "Falcon." Hayes advanced, weapon steady. "On your knees. Hands behind your head." The man hesitated, then obeyed slowly, lips curling into a sneer. Rourke kept her weapon trained, finger ready, every muscle tight. They cuffed him, dragged him to his feet. He didn't resist, didn't speak. He just stared at them, eyes shifting from soldier to soldier, then settling on Rourke with an intensity that made her skin crawl. She stared back, unflinching, though her heart beat faster. "Target secured," Hayes reported into comms. But nothing ever stayed simple. The exfil path lit up with gunfire as soon as they stepped into the street. Fighters poured from alleys, rifles flashing. The village erupted. Bullets snapped past, thudding into walls, kicking up dirt. "Contact left," someone shouted. Rourke dropped to a knee, sore braced, and unleashed hell down the alley. Muzzle flashes winked and died as her rounds chewed through brick and flesh alike. The squad pushed forward, Falcon dragged between two soldiers, his sneer never fading. Every street corner brought more fire. Every rooftop hid another rifle. Rourke's arms ached, ears rang, vision tunneled, but she kept firing, kept moving. Her belt ran dry, she slapped another in, hands slick with sweat, motion automatic. They reached the hums under a hail of bullets. One soldier went down, screaming, blood spurting from his shoulder. Rourke and Mendez dragged him in, shoving Falcon into the back with restraints tightened. Engines roared, tires kicked dirt, and they tore out of the village with bullets chasing them until the dark swallowed it all. Inside the vehicle, silence fell, broken only by the soldiers' groans of pain. Falcon sat calmly, cuffed, watching Rourke with that same burning stare. She tried to ignore it, but she couldn't. He wasn't afraid. That unsettled her more than any gunfire. Back at base, Falcon was locked in a reinforced cell, guards posted. Intelligence officers swarmed, eager to crack him open. The squad collapsed into their bunks, exhaustion heavier than armor. But Rourke couldn't sleep. She kept seeing his eyes in the dark, staring at her, unblinking. As if he knew something she didn't. 2 days later, the base was rocked by an explosion. A truck packed with explosives rammed the outer gate, detonating in a thunderous wave. Alarms blared, soldiers scrambled, smoke filled the sky. Rourke grabbed her weapon, sprinted to the perimeter. Flames consumed vehicles, debris scattered across the yard. Screams echoed. Through the chaos, she heard Hayes shouting, "Falcon's gone." Her blood froze. They sprinted to the holding cell, blown open, guards dead. Falcon was gone, vanished into the smoke and fire. The realization hit like a punch. They had fought, bled, risked everything to capture him, and now he was free again. Worse, he had struck back, and the cost was lives. Merrick stormed into the command tent, face hard, voice iron. He had help from the inside. Someone fed him intel, someone opened doors. "Until we find him, none of you breathe easy." The words carved into Rourke's gut. Betrayal. Someone within their own ranks had helped Falcon escape. And until they found out who, every shadow looked suspicious. That night, she sat on her cot, weapon across her lap, staring at the floor. Hayes came in, leg wrapped, exhaustion etched in every line of his face. He sat beside her without a word. For a long time, the silence hung. Finally, he said, "This is the war, Rourke. Not just the guns. It's trust. And right now, that's what's bleeding out." She nodded slowly, throat tight. The laughter she once remembered felt like it belonged to another life. Sleep didn't come. When she closed her eyes, she saw Falcon's stare, burning in the dark, promising more blood. The war wasn't over. It was just getting sharper. The base smelled of smoke for days. Blackened debris still lined the perimeter where the truck bomb had torn a hole through steel and concrete. Engineers worked around the clock welding new barriers, stacking sandbags, patching walls, but everyone knew it wasn't enough. Not after Falcon slipped away. Not after the realization that someone inside had helped him. Trust was the first casualty. Soldiers who once joked and swapped stories over lukewarm rations now watched each other with suspicion. Conversations dropped when footsteps approached. Every order, every action, carried the unspoken question, who had opened the door? Rourke felt it more than most. Her squad had been the one to capture Falcon, to drag him out under fire, to deliver him alive. Now their victory had soured into failure, and the commander they fought so hard to cage had vanished into the desert again. She spent her nights cleaning the saw until her hands cramped, chasing the sound of the bolt snapping back into place because it was the only thing she could control. Sleep came in jagged fragments, full of Falcon's burning eyes, of laughter that wasn't laughter, of explosions tearing through the base again and again. During one briefing, Captain Merrick stood stiff before the gathered squads. His voice was calm, but his jaw was tight. "We've got intel Falcon is planning a strike on one of our supply routes. He wants to choke us out, bleed us dry. We can't let that happen. We'll be running escort, heavy security. And let me be clear, if he's bold enough to hit us here, he's bold enough to hit us anywhere." Hayes leaned against his crutch, legs still weak but his eyes sharp. "We're walking bait," he muttered under his breath, just loud enough for Rourke to hear. She didn't disagree. When the convoy rolled out the next morning, it was larger than usual, armored trucks, gunners posted, helicopters circling overhead. They moved slow, deliberate, like daring Falcon to strike. Dust rose in thick clouds behind them, clinging to skin, choking lungs. Hours passed with nothing but the endless desert stretching on all sides. The monotony was worse than firefight, it let thoughts creep in, doubts coil tighter. Rourke's eyes swept the horizon, finger on the trigger, pulse steady despite the unease. Every glint of sunlight on stone looked like a rifle scope. Every shadow looked like an ambush waiting to spring. The first blast came at noon. An IED tore through the lead vehicle, flipping it like a toy, fireball punching the sky. The shockwave rattled teeth, dust choking vision. Before the echo faded, gunfire erupted from the ridges. Muzzle flashes winked, rounds snapping against armor. Contact left. Contact right, voices shouted through the chaos. Rourke dropped to the ground, braced her saw, and returned fire. Brass casings flew, belt rattling as she poured suppressive rounds into the ridge. Fighters darted between rocks, disciplined, coordinated. This wasn't random. This was Falcon. Another vehicle took a hit, RPG slamming its side, shrapnel slicing through the air. Screams cut through radio static. The convoy was pinned, hemmed in from both sides. Hayes crawled to her side, dragging his rifle. "They're trying to box us in." She shifted her aim, swept fire across the ridge, forcing heads down. "Then we break the box. Air support's 10 minutes out." Mendez shouted, ducking behind the smoking wreck of a Humvee. 10 minutes is too long," Hayes growled. The firefight raged. Rourke felt the recoil slam into her shoulder, the weapon grow hot beneath her gloves, smoke curling from the barrel. She fired until the belt ran dry, reloaded, and fired again. Her focus narrowed until there was nothing but targets and survival. Then a voice crackled over the radio, distorted but chilling. "You think you can cage me? You think you can stop me? You'll all die in the dirt." Falcon. The squad froze for a fraction of a second, even as bullets tore around them. The man wasn't just alive, he was here, leading the assault. Rourke's stomach turned to stone. She slammed the trigger, rage fueling each round. "Come and get us, bastard," she spat, though he couldn't hear her. The ridges lit up with more fire. Fighters surged closer, pushing down the slope. It wasn't just suppression, they were trying to overwhelm, to wipe the convoy off the map. Rourke's belt jammed. She cursed, yanking the cover open, clearing the stoppage with hands that shook only from speed, not fear. Hayes fired beside her, rounds snapping out in controlled bursts. Mendez lobbed grenades into the slope, blasts carving gaps in the charge. But they kept coming. A figure stood tall on the ridge, gesturing, rallying the fighters. Even at this distance, Rourke knew it was Falcon. He wasn't hiding in the shadows this time. He wanted to be seen. He wanted them to know he was untouchable. Rourke felt something burn inside her. Not fear. Not doubt. A sharp, cutting determination. She sighted in, finger steady. She wanted nothing more than to drop him where he stood. But before she could fire, Falcon vanished behind cover, and RPGs rained again. One struck close, shattering stone, sending shrapnel slicing across her arm. She hissed, blood soaking her sleeve, but stayed on the gun. Pain was irrelevant. The radio crackled with air support ETA, 5 minutes. Too long. Fighters closed the gap, less than 100 yards now. Hayes shouted, "We hold here or we're done." They formed a desperate line, rifles, saws, grenades, everything poured into the advancing wave. The noise was deafening, constant, bodies falling in the sand. Rourke barely noticed the sting of her arm, the ache in her shoulder. Her world had narrowed to the barrel, the trigger, the need to hold. Finally, the scream of jets tore overhead. Missiles streaked down, detonating across the ridges. The ground shook with each blast, fire ripping through enemy positions. Screams replaced gunfire. Fighters scattered, broken, fleeing. And just like that, the assault collapsed. Silence returned, thick with smoke and the stench of blood. The convoy was a graveyard of twisted steel, burning tires, and wounded men. Medics rushed, pulling soldiers from wreckage. Rourke sat back, chest heaving, gloves slick with sweat and blood. Hayes dropped beside her, face grim, eyes scanning the ridge. He was here. You saw him. She nodded, jaw tight. He wanted us to see him. And he got away. Again. The frustration in his voice mirrored the knot in her chest. They had survived, but survival didn't feel like victory. Not when Falcon walked away to strike again. Back at base, Merrick's anger burned cold. His debrief was short, sharp. We underestimated him. That won't happen again. We find him. We finish this. But the suspicion still lingered. If Falcon had inside help before, he might have it still. Every plan could be compromised, every mission leaked. Trust eroded further, soldiers watching each other with hard eyes. That night, Rourke sat outside, arm bandaged, staring at the desert horizon. She couldn't shake Falcon's voice from the radio, that taunt like a ghost crawling under her skin. Mendez joined her, silent for a while before saying, "You almost had him, didn't you?" She didn't answer. "You'll get another chance," he said quietly. "But be careful. Men like him, they want you to chase. They want you angry. That's how they win." She finally looked at him, eyes hard. "Then I'll make sure I'm angrier than he expects." When she finally lay down, her dreams were fire and sand. Falcon's stare. Falcon's voice. And always, always, the laughter from the weapons store that had turned into silence. But this silence was different. He hadn't been beaten. Not yet. And as dawn broke over the desert, painting the sky red, Rourke knew the war had shifted again. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was personal. The night was not silent. Even though the firefight had ended, the village still seemed to breathe with tension. Smoke drifted lazily from broken rooftops. The glow of burning timber pulsed like a heartbeat in the dark. Somewhere far off, a dog barked, sharp and restless. And in the middle of the ruined courtyard, Claire sat with her back against a half-destroyed wall, helmet dangling from her hand, her chest heaving. "Keep pressure on that wound," she called, voice hoarse but sharp. Specialist Guzman knelt over Staff Sergeant Miles, who had taken a round through the fire during the retreat. Blood still soaked through the field dressing. Guzman's hands shook, but Claire reached over and steadied them, her fingers pressing down on the wound with him. Miles grunted, face pale, teeth clenched against the pain. "You'll be fine, old man," Claire muttered, forcing steadiness into her tone. "Just a scratch. You'll be cussing at recruits again in no time." Miles gave her a weak smirk. "Better not let me hear you call me old again." She managed a dry chuckle, though her stomach twisted. He needed evac, soon. But comms were still patchy, and no medevac bird was going to fly into this unstable airspace until dawn. That meant keeping him alive until then. That meant she had to hold this damn place no matter what. "Doc," she called, and the team medic crawled over. "Stay on him. I want him stable." Doc nodded, immediately taking over. Claire rose, her joints aching, her rifle heavy in her hands. She scanned the perimeter, sentries posted, weapons ready, eyes wide and exhausted. The squad looked like hell. But they were still breathing. That was what mattered. "All right," she said, voice carrying, "listen up. We're not out of the fire yet. The enemy regrouped faster than command expected. We'll hold this village until reinforcements arrive. Nobody panics, nobody breaks, and we make it through the night. Understood?" There was a chorus of low "Roger" and "Yes, Sergeant," though none of it carried much strength. But Claire wasn't asking for strength. She was asking for resolve. And she saw it in their eyes. Hours crawled by. The squad rotated shifts, some catching shallow rest against cold stone walls, others pacing the shadows with rifles ready. Claire never let herself drift. Every rustle in the brush made her twitch. Every whisper of wind against the burned shutters made her think of a muzzle flash. Near midnight, movement came. Not the erratic shuffle of wind-tossed debris, but measured, deliberate. She lifted her fist in silence, and the squad froze. Shapes emerged from the far tree line, half a dozen, then more. Too disciplined for villagers. Too quiet for scavengers. Claire's pulse quickened. "Hold," she whispered into the squad net. "Don't fire yet." The figures advanced, scanning with night vision goggles. Claire crouched lower, finger on the trigger, breath shallow. Then one of them tripped a noisemaker rigged earlier, empty can rattling on wire. The enemy froze, weapons rising. "Contact front." Claire barked, unleashing the first shot. The courtyard exploded into chaos. Muzzle flashes tore the darkness apart. Bullets cracked against stone. Claire moved fast, shifting from cover to cover, returning precise bursts. 2 enemy fighters dropped, their silhouettes collapsing into the dust. But more poured in, disciplined and relentless. Push them back. Claire roared. Don't let them breach. Grenades arced. One detonated near the wall, showering the squad in debris. Claire felt the shockwave slam through her ribs. Her ears rang, but she forced herself upright. Through the haze she spotted one of her soldiers pinned down, bullets shredding the stone inches from his head. Without thinking, she sprinted, sliding into cover beside him. She leaned out, squeezing off a burst that cut down the attacker. The pinned soldier, barely 19, looked at her with wide, terrified eyes. You keep that head down, she snapped. I didn't drag you into this fight just to carry you out in a bag. Got it? He swallowed hard, nodded, and returned fire. Minutes dragged into eternity. Finally, the enemy began to falter. Their movements grew sloppy, their advance slowing under the squad's stubborn defense. One last push, Claire thought, just one more surge. And then, silence. The survivors melted back into the trees, leaving only bodies and silence behind. The squad exhaled as one, shoulders slumping. Claire leaned against the wall, sweat dripping down her neck. They'll be back, she muttered, more to herself than anyone. The radio crackled suddenly, startling everyone. Outlaw 2-1, this is Overlord. Reinforcements inbound at 0400. Hold your position. Relief surged through her, brief and sharp. They just had to make it a few more hours. But the village wasn't finished bleeding them yet. Near 2 in the morning, while the squad rotated rest, Claire heard it, a low groan from a collapsed hut nearby. She raised her rifle, signaling 2 soldiers to flank her. They approached cautiously, shifting broken planks aside. Beneath the rubble lay a man, civilian, by the looks of him. Older, dust-covered, face streaked with blood. He blinked up at her with dazed eyes. Help, he rasped in broken English. Family, inside. Claire's chest tightened. She exchanged a glance with her soldiers. The safe choice was to leave him. Could be a trap. Could be bait. But she saw something in his eyes, not calculation, not malice. Just raw desperation. All right, she said softly. We'll help. They dug carefully, shifting timber and stone. Soon they pulled free a young girl, coughing but alive, followed by a trembling woman clutching her hand. The family clung together, sobbing quietly. Claire's squad watched in silence. Some faces hardened with suspicion, others softened with something like hope. Get them water, Claire ordered. We'll move them when the sun rises. As dawn approached, the squad looked less like hardened soldiers and more like guardians of this broken little place. The civilians huddled close, eyes wide but grateful. And though no one said it aloud, Claire knew, it was moments like this that gave their fight meaning. But war never gave gifts without a price. The reinforcements arrived in armored vehicles just as the first light bled across the horizon. Dust plumed in their wake, soldiers dismounting with fresh faces and crisp gear. Relief washed over Claire's squad. You did good holding this, the lieutenant in charge said, giving her a respectful nod. We'll take over from here. Claire should have felt relief. Instead, she felt only exhaustion. She handed over the defense reports, briefed the lieutenant, then turned back to her squad. Mount up, she told them. We're not done yet. The mission wasn't over. Command wanted them pushing deeper into the valley. Enemy forces were consolidating somewhere ahead, and the squad had to help spearhead the advance. So they climbed into the armored convoy, battered but unbroken. The village faded behind them, smoke rising, survivors clinging to life, their fate uncertain. Claire didn't look back. Hours later, the convoy rumbled through narrow mountain roads. The terrain grew harsh, cliffs looming high, valleys dropping steep. Perfect ambush country. Claire's instincts screamed caution. Eyes sharp, she said over the intercom. This place is a kill box. And then it happened. The lead vehicle erupted in fire, flipping onto its side. The blast shook the ground, a deafening thunder that swallowed shouts and curses. Ambush! Ambush! Voices screamed. Bullets rained down from the cliffs, trace of fire slicing through the dust. Rockets streaked in, slamming into the convoy's rear. Soldiers scattered, scrambling for cover as the canyon turned into hell. Claire grabbed her rifle, shoving the door open. She dove out, rolling behind a boulder as bullets pinged off metal. She shouted into the radio, but static swallowed her words. Comms jammed. She peeked over the rock, spotting figures on the ridgeline. Dozens, maybe more. They were pinned, outnumbered, caught in the worst possible ground. Squad. Rally on me, she bellowed. One by one, her soldiers crawled through the chaos to her side. Faces smeared with grime, eyes wide with fear, but still moving. Still fighting. Options? Guzman gasped, ducking as a bullet whined overhead. Claire's mind raced. Retreat wasn't possible, the road was blocked, the convoy burning. Staying put meant certain death. That left only one choice: push forward, break through the choke point, and pray they made it out. We charge, she said grimly. We hit hard, we hit fast, and we don't stop until we're clear. Anyone hesitates, we're all dead. You with me? Her squad stared at her, stunned. But then one by one, they nodded. Claire's hands tightened on her rifle. Her heart hammered. Her throat burned. On my mark, she whispered. The enemy fire raked down harder, merciless. But Claire rose anyway, teeth clenched, lungs full of fire. Mark, she roared, and surged forward. Her squad followed, their cries echoing in the canyon. And the world became nothing but gunfire, dust, and blood. The charge down the canyon was madness. Dust filled the air, thick enough to choke, while bullets ripped through it in fiery streaks. Claire sprinted with her rifle blazing, each trigger pulled deliberate, cutting down shadows on the ridge. The ground shook with the impact of mortars, showers of rock pelting her helmet. Around her, her squad roared like wild men and women, their voices raw with desperation and fury. A rocket slammed into a vehicle near the choke point, erupting into a ball of fire. The heat singed her skin as she dove to the side, rolling behind a jagged outcrop. Suppressive fire on the left ridge, she shouted, voice straining above the chaos. Martinez, get that saw up. Martinez dropped prone, braced the machine gun, and unleashed a torrent of rounds. The staccato hammering echoed, sparks flying as tracer rounds lit up the slope. Enemy silhouettes ducked, breaking their rhythm just long enough. Move, move, move. Claire ordered, pulling Guzman by the vest. They sprinted again, weaving through burning debris. The canyon narrowed ahead, an opening barely wide enough for a squad to push through. The enemy fire concentrated there, bottlenecking them. Claire's chest burned with each breath, her throat raw, but she pressed forward. A soldier screamed behind her. She turned in time to see PFC Daniels clutch his side, crimson spilling through his fingers. He stumbled, collapsing onto the dirt. Claire's heart lurched, her instinct to run to him immediate. But so was the ambush cruelty, rounds chewed the ground where his body lay. Anyone who broke cover would be shredded. Sergeant! Martinez shouted, eyes wild. Claire froze. Every fiber of her screamed to save Daniels. But one choice meant one body became two. The squad's survival hinged on keeping momentum. She forced her voice out, jagged and merciless. Leave him. Push forward. The words tore through her throat like glass. Martinez hesitated, then nodded, tears in his eyes, and kept firing. Daniels's cries echoed behind them as they pushed deeper. The squad surged as one, slamming into the bottleneck with everything they had left. Grenades flew. Explosions rocked the cliffs, sending stone shards cascading down. Claire led the charge, rifle barking, her boots slipping on rubble. She broke through first, rolling behind a boulder on the far side. Her squad tumbled after her, breathless, shaking, some bleeding but alive. Count off, she barked. Voices answered, ragged but present. Daniels's name hung unspoken in the silence that followed. Claire shut her eyes for a split second, then opened them again. No time to mourn. Not yet. The enemy fire lessened as they regrouped deeper in the canyon. It gave them a moment's reprieve. Claire's lungs burned as she gulped air, her hands trembling against the rifle. We've got to flank them, Guzman said, spitting dirt. We can't hold here. Claire nodded. Agreed. But we're cut off from the convoy. No comms. It's just us. A long silence fell. The squad's eyes turned to her, waiting. Depending on her. All right, she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside. We go up the right slope. It's steep, but it'll give us a vantage point. We'll hit them from above, drive them off the ridgeline. That's our way out. No one argued. They knew it was insane. They also knew it was the only choice. The climb was brutal. Loose rock slid beneath their boots. Every pull on the slope strained muscles already burning from battle. Claire led, teeth clenched, every motion fueled by sheer will. Below, sporadic fire cracked, but the enemy seemed unsure of their position. That was the only reason they weren't dead yet. By the time they crested the ridge, dawn's first light was bleeding into the sky. The sun painted the canyon in pale orange, the smoke glowing like embers. From above, they saw the enemy's force clearly, at least 40 fighters, dug in on the opposite ridge, heavy weapons braced against makeshift cover. If they had stayed below, they would have been annihilated. Claire pointed, signaling Martinez. He set up the saw, breath heaving. Guzman passed out grenades. The squad prepared in silence, every face hard, eyes fixed. On my signal, Claire whispered. We hit them with everything. No hesitation. No holding back. We finish this. Her squad nodded, jaws tight. She raised her fist, let it hang in the air, then dropped it. The ridge erupted. Grenades thundered, machine gun fire poured, rifles cracked in rapid succession. The enemy panicked, spinning toward the sudden storm from above. Claire picked her targets cleanly, dropping one, then another. Adrenaline surged, drowning her exhaustion. The ambush collapsed into chaos. Fighters scrambled, retreating toward the rear of the canyon. A few tried to return fire, but Claire's squad cut them down before they could stabilize. Within minutes, the enemy was in full retreat, leaving weapons and bodies behind. The canyon fell silent. Truly silent this time, save for the ringing in their ears and the rasp of their own breath. They had survived. Claire lowered her rifle slowly, chest heaving. She looked at her squad, blooded, battered, but alive. Except Daniels. The image of his outstretched hand haunted her. We need to move, she said at last. Command doesn't know we're alive. And we're deep in enemy territory. The squad nodded, gathering their gear. No cheers, no smiles. Just grim resolve. They descended the ridge cautiously, moving toward the narrow trails leading out of the canyon. The sun climbed higher, exposing the devastation left behind. Burnt-out vehicles still smoked. Bodies littered the ground, friend and foe alike. As they passed Daniels's body, Claire slowed. She knelt briefly, pressing her hand against his shoulder. I'm sorry, she whispered so softly no one else heard. Then she rose, and kept walking. By midday, they had cleared the canyon and entered rolling hills dotted with scrub and stone. The air was clearer here, the silence heavier. They halted to rest, crouching in a dry creek bed. Martinez pulled off his helmet, running a hand through his sweat-soaked hair. We're ghosts out here. No comms, no supplies, no backup. What's the play, Sergeant? Claire looked at him, then at each face. They were exhausted, pushed past the edge. She couldn't order them further into the abyss without a plan. We head east, she decided. If we can reach Hilltop Outpost, we'll find friendlies and a comm relay. It's 2 days march minimum, maybe more. We'll ration, we'll move smart, and we'll make it. And if we don't? Guzman asked quietly. Claire's gaze hardened. We will. The march began. The squad moved in silence, boots crunching against dirt, weapons slung but ready. Every shadow on the horizon set nerves on edge. The sun beat down, turning their gear into anchors. By dusk, their water was running low, their legs trembling. They camped in a shallow ravine, setting perimeter security with motion sensors. Rations were divided sparingly. No one complained. Hunger was easier to bear than enemy fire. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She sat awake, rifle across her lap, staring at the stars. Daniels's face kept returning. The choice she made. The weight of it pressed heavy, but she forced herself to hold it. Commanders didn't get to lay down their burdens. Near midnight, Guzman crept over, settling beside her. You did what you had to do, he said quietly, reading her silence. Claire's jaw tightened. Did I? Or did I leave him because I was scared? You left him because if you hadn't, we'd all be dead, Guzman replied. He knew the risk. We all do. Don't let it eat you alive, Sergeant. We still need you. She didn't answer. But she stayed awake the rest of the night, the words echoing. The next day tested them further. Heat pounded, terrain rose steeper. By noon, one soldier collapsed from exhaustion. They lifted him, shared his weight, and kept moving. Water was nearly gone. Claire rationed her own, slipping sips to the younger soldiers without them noticing. By late afternoon, movement flickered on the horizon, dust plumes, vehicles. Claire froze, signaling the squad down. They watched as a convoy rolled along a distant ridge. Not friendly. The silhouettes of technicals bristling with weapons confirmed it. Ambush. Martinez whispered. No, Claire said. Too many. We avoid them. They waited until the convoy passed, hearts pounding, before moving again. Every step felt heavier. By evening, they stumbled upon an abandoned farmhouse. Its walls were crumbling, roof half gone, but it offered shelter. They secured it, set watch, and collapsed inside. That night, as the squad dozed in restless patches, Claire sat by the doorway, staring into the darkness. The farmhouse smelled of dust and old wood, eerily quiet. She thought of Daniels. She thought of the civilians in the village. She thought of her own family, half a world away, who had no idea where she was at that moment. And for the first time since the ambush, she let a single tear fall. Then she wiped it away, tightened her grip on the rifle, and kept watch. Dawn brought movement again, not enemy, but faint radio chatter picked up on Martinez's headset. Weak, but unmistakably friendly. "Overlord, this is Outlaw 2-1, Claire said into the static. "We are alive." Repeat, "alive." "Requesting extraction coordinates, over." The response was garbled, fragmented, but clear enough. Friendlies were pushing toward Hilltop Outpost. If they could hold 2 more days, extraction was possible. Claire looked at her squad, ragged but alive. 2 more days, she said. "That's all we have to make it." They nodded, grim determination returning. 2 more days of hell. 2 more days of war. And Claire knew, every decision she made in those days would decide not only their survival, but whether Daniels's death had meant anything at all. The morning sun rose heavy and unforgiving, baking the cracked earth around the farmhouse where Claire's squad had holed up. The building was nothing more than skeletal walls and dust, but it had given them a night's reprieve. Now, with packs reloaded and rifles checked, they stood in formation, each face hardened, gaunt, but resolute. 2 days, Claire said, scanning each soldier. Her voice was firm, carrying more steel than she felt inside. 2 days of marching, 2 days of surviving, then we meet our people at Hilltop Outpost. That's the finish line. Nobody quits before then. You hear me? "Roger, Sergeant," the squad muttered, the chorus ragged but solid. They moved out. The march was grueling. The land stretched barren, rolling hills offering little cover. Heat shimmered on the horizon, tricking the eyes into seeing water that wasn't there. Their canteens rattled nearly empty, and every step seemed to suck life from their boots. Claire set a steady pace, never too fast, never slowing, forcing the squad into a rhythm that became survival itself. By midday, Guzman stumbled, knees buckling. Claire caught him, slung his arm over her shoulder. "I'm fine," he gasped, breath ragged. "Save it," Claire said. "We carry each other, or we die alone." He didn't argue. The squad pressed on. The second night came with no moon, only stars glittering coldly above. They dug shallow positions on a hillside, taking turns at watch. Every creak of shifting earth, every sigh of the wind through grass, felt like enemy movement. Claire stayed awake long past her shift, watching, waiting, her rifle cradled like a lifeline. When dawn came, it brought more than light. Martinez, eyes glued to his scope, hissed, "Movement. Northeast ridge." Claire crawled up beside him. Through the scope, she saw them, enemy patrol, 6 fighters, moving cautious, scanning. Too close. Too sharp. "They'll find us," Martinez whispered. Claire's mind worked fast. 6 men. The squad was spent. A firefight risked drawing more. But leaving them meant certain discovery. "We hit them fast," she decided. "Ambush, silence them before they can signal." She laid out the plan quickly. 2 soldiers flanked wide, Martinez ready with the saw, Claire herself taking point. They waited, hearts hammering, as the patrol closed in. When the lead fighter stepped into range, Claire's hand chopped down. The hillside erupted. Martinez's gun barked, Claire's rifle spat fire, grenades thumped into the dirt. The patrol never had a chance. It was over in less than 30 seconds, silence falling as quickly as it had shattered. The squad lay still, waiting. No answering fire came. No reinforcements. Just the wind. Claire exhaled. Clear. Strip them for supplies. Move quick. They scavenged water, ammunition, even a battered map marked with positions. It confirmed what Claire already knew, the enemy controlled these hills. Every step closer to Hilltop Outpost would be contested. By late afternoon, they reached a narrow ravine. The map suggested it was the fastest path east. Claire studied the jagged cliffs, her gut tightening. It felt too perfect for an ambush. But time and exhaustion pressed them forward. They entered single file, eyes sharp. The walls rose high, shadows swallowing them. Every sound echoed too loud, the clink of gear, the scrape of boots. Claire's nerves screamed louder with each step. Halfway through, the trap sprung. Gunfire erupted from above, rocks exploding in shards. Bullets raked the ravine, sparks dancing. The squad dove for cover that barely existed. Martinez screamed, clutching his leg as a round tore through muscle. Return fire. Claire roared, squeezing off bursts upward. Dust filled her throat, smoke choking the air. The enemy had them pinned. No clean sightlines, no way to climb. The squad's firepower barely nicked the cliffs. "We're fish in a barrel," Guzman shouted. Claire's mind raced. They couldn't win this by staying. She spotted a rock slide further ahead, a pile of loose boulders clinging to the slope. If they could dislodge it, it might block the attackers and give them cover to push through. "Cover me," she barked, then bolted, sprinting through the storm of bullets. Rock chips tore at her arms, rounds snapping past her head. She dove against the boulder pile, pulling a grenade free. With trembling fingers, she yanked the pin, shoved it deep into the cracks, and rolled away. The blast thundered through the ravine. The slope groaned, then collapsed in a roaring avalanche of stone. Dust engulfed the air, screams cut off as fighters above were crushed or thrown. "Go, go, go!" Claire shouted, dragging Martinez to his feet. The squad pushed forward, scrambling over debris, lungs burning. Behind them, enemy fire sputtered, broken. Ahead, light split the canyon as they burst free. They collapsed in the open field beyond, coughing, heaving, every limb shaking. But they were alive. Martinez's wound bled heavily. Doc tore into his pack, working fast. Claire knelt, pressing down on the injury with steady hands. Martinez clenched his teeth, eyes glistening, but nodded at her. "You're not dying here," she told him. "Not after everything." The squad moved again at dusk, slower now, Martinez half-carried. Claire's own body screamed, every muscle frayed, but she pushed. Always forward. Always toward Hilltop. That night, they lit no fire, ate no rations. Just silence, broken only by labored breathing. By morning, they crested a rise, and froze. In the valley below stood Hilltop Outpost. Concrete walls, radio antenna, the faint glint of American flags in the rising sun. Relief crashed over them, so sharp it nearly buckled Claire's knees. "There it is," Guzman whispered, voice cracking. But between them and salvation lay one last obstacle. Enemy fighters dug into defensive positions around the approach. Trenches cut into the earth, sandbags stacked, patrols pacing. Dozens of them. Too many for a straight push. Claire crouched low, scanning. The outpost's defenders didn't even know they were here. Radio range was still jammed. They had to fight their way through. Her squad looked at her, waiting. Trusting. "This is it," she said quietly. "One last fight. We break through, we live. We fail, we don't. No holding back." Martinez adjusted his grip on the saw, pale but grinning weakly. "Then let's make it loud." The plan was reckless, but so was war. They split, half laying suppressive fire from a ridge, half charging the flank under cover of grenades. Claire led the charge, heart thundering, every step echoing Daniels's sacrifice, every breath screaming survival. Gunfire erupted. Grenades thumped. The enemy spun in panic as fire rained from two directions. Claire fired until her rifle clicked empty, reloaded, fired again. She vaulted sandbags, bayonet flashing, driving the squad forward inch by bloody inch. Bullets whipped past. Guzman cried out, stumbling, but Claire yanked him up, shoving him forward. Martinez's saw thundered, mowing down a line of fighters before it jammed. He cleared it with shaking hands, sweat pouring down his face. Minutes stretched into eternity. The squad tore through trench after trench, bodies falling, dirt spraying. Claire's world narrowed to muzzle flashes, blood, the pounding of her own heart. Then, through the smoke, she saw it, the outpost gate swinging open, friendly soldiers rushing forward, rifles blazing to cover them. American voices shouted, "Over here! Push forward!" Strength surged in Claire's veins. She roared, driving her squad the last few meters, crashing into the arms of their brothers-in-arms. The battle ended in a storm of fire and silence. The enemy broke, scattering into the hills. The field lay torn, strewn with bodies and smoke. Claire staggered to her knees inside the outpost walls, helmet slipping from her hand. Medics swarmed, pulling Martinez onto a stretcher, treating Guzman's wound, checking each survivor. She sat in the dust, staring at her trembling hands. They were alive. Against all odds, they had made it. But Daniels wasn't there. His face hovered behind her eyes, accusing, proud, both at once. A shadow fell across her. She looked up to see a commander, uniform crisp, eyes steady. He studied her for a moment, then raised his hand in salute. The courtyard fell silent. Soldiers turned, watching, as the commander's salute lingered. Claire, still seated in the dust, stunned and blooded, returned it slowly. No words passed. None were needed. The war wasn't over. More battles would come. More choices, more losses, more burdens. But in that moment, amid the silence that followed the storm, Claire knew something had shifted. She wasn't just a survivor. She wasn't just another soldier. She had become the one her squad, and maybe even the war itself, would look to. And somewhere deep inside, under the weight of grief and exhaustion, burned a fragile, dangerous spark of belief. The belief that they could win. The end.